Hello, very good evening. I can see 5 of you have joined right on the clock at 8 o'clock. So I'm very happy to join all of you on this Facebook live chat, which is sponsored by All India Agricultural Students Association of India, which has several thousand members. And I'm really very thankful to Ashish Khandelwal for organizing this particular live chat. And as you know that my topic is the decoding of plant genomes and its use in crop improvement. So since it is a very diverse group and maybe some general people also may join here, I will not be very technical in my presentation. I will try to keep it more generalized, but at the same time I will also like to give you some information which will be of technical in nature so that you can appreciate, because I understand mostly the students will join this particular live chat. So very nice, welcome Atul Kumar ji, Prashant Bisain and Bahul Giri, Abdul Fiaz. Nice to see you all joining very fast. Amit Kumar Pandey. Very good evening, late evening to all of you. And I am between your tea and the dinner, so I will take just about 1 hour, not very long. And once again, I am very grateful to all of you. And actually, before I start, I would like to pay my gratitude to all my teachers who have taught me right from the primary school to the university, to my parents and my family and all the friends whose love and affection and their support makes it possible to carry on with any of this kind of work which I am going to present you today. In fact, I have three separate kinds of stories which I could share with you, which I have spent almost all my life working. One, I have worked quite a lot on the wheat seed storage proteins and their role in bread and chapati quality and also nutritional quality, which work I am continuing. So this will be a quite different kind of work. And then I have done a lot of work during the last 10 years on collecting the wild rice resources from India and their utilization. I will be sharing some of that. But today I am going to talk and give an overview about the genomics work which I have done here in Pusa. Basically, I came here in 2000 from Pantnagar, and then I started this work. In fact, I was called by then DG Dr. Paroda Sahab and Dr. Mangla Rai and my teacher here at IRI, Dr. R.B. Singh, Professor. They called me from Pantnagar to start this rice genome project. So I will just go through very briefly about that. So before we start, welcome Pankaj Singh, Manish Kumar, Kailash Samalji. I would like to say one prayer before I start. This kind of works which we are working, all of us are working in the national interest, not only to build our career, our growth, but also we are working for the development of our country, our nation. And working together is very important to achieve this goal. And you can see in today's environment where a lot of scare is there about this deadly virus pandemic which is going on in the whole country. In fact, the whole world is locked down. So in this situation, again, we have to see solidarity and work together to solve all the problem. Individuals cannot do anything, but working together. So I will just say one small prayer which we call Shanti Part, and if you stay with me all the way, I will sing for you also towards the end. So my prayer is that Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejisvinavadhitamastu ma vidisavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And its meaning is very simple. May we be protected together by the Almighty. Then we may be nourished together. We may work together with all our energy and vigor, and may our study be enlightening and for the benefit of all, and there should not be any hostility or any rivalry among us. We should all work towards the greater cause, and Om, peace, peace be. May the peace be on earth, peace be in our society, peace be in our country and all the whole world. So with this small prayer, now I would like to start some work which I just wanted to summarize with you. See, during the next say 50 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about the genome, what is a genome and why we should try to decode it, or what is called sequence it. And then I will very briefly summarize the plant genome work which we have done at NIPB in ICR and in collaboration with South Campus, Delhi University and other institutes. And some of the applications, how this work has been applied in gene discovery and development of new varieties. And then I will tell you about some of the indigenous work. Of course, we started with the international collaboration, but slowly we developed our own capacity and we did something on our own. And then what are the future challenges and what we could do more. Welcome Dr. Subbu Yadav, Mr. Mir, Mr. Amrita Singh is watching, PK Singh. Welcome sir, welcome Dr. PK Singh, Santosh Mali. So several people have joined, the number is 24. So I'm very much encouraged to see all your interest. I'm sure many of you know about my work because I've been working together with you, interacting with you. But this is a great opportunity to go live and talk to all of you together. So I will see if you have any question you can ask also, and then I will be answering. I will not go into too much of the technical. Let us start, since I am going to talk about the genome. So although many of you know, I just like to again define it as it is known. So genome was defined 100 years back, actually by a German scientist called Hans Winkler. He was a German botanist, and he defined the genome in 1920. Now it is 2020. That genome is the complete set of genetic information present in a single haploid cell of an organism, including its protoplasm. That means including chloroplast and mitochondria. So that is one set of complete information. It could be genes, it could be repetitive sequences, but the genetic information includes both genes and non-genes also, which are mostly related to the expression of the genes and evolution of the genes. So that is genome. Then why do you want to study the genome? Why it is important? Now many people criticize that why we should spend a lot of money and effort, and so much is involved, crores of rupees is spent, is it waste of money to do all these kinds of high science? It has some utility. So I'm going to tell you 4 points why it is important, starting from the very basic to the very applied. The very first thing is that, of course, our basic curiosity of the knowledge. Genome, as you know, it is the complete blueprint of the individuals. Every living being, whether it's a plant, animal, or worm, or even virus, or elephant, all the living beings on this planet, they have their genome, they have their genetic code, which determines that what they will become. When you sow the seed of a mango, you get a mango, and a human's baby is a human. All because this is coded in each cell of the body, and so this is just like the seed which passes on, then it expresses, and this code is very, very huge. So once we understand, when we have the complete information, the complete physical map, means each and every chromosome from one end to another end, we know the complete information, how many genes are there and what is their sequence. Once we know that, and now we know a lot of that, then we can compare one species with another species, and then we can see how we are all each other. Not only how different human beings are related to each other, how different animals are related, plants, bacteria. So every living being on this earth, they have a common ancestor. Life has a common origin. Not only an Indian, a Chinese, an African or European is a cousin, but even animals and humans are cousins, and also plants and animals are also cousins. Even rice and human, they are made of the same material, same DNA. So the language of genome is universal. And this was worked out more than 50-60 years back when the genetic code was deciphered, that the 3 nucleotides make code for 1 amino acid. So these kinds of things, this science has grown slowly over the centuries, and now we know much more, and we can even read every base pair of it. So this is the genome. So basic curiosity is actually satisfied, that whom we are and how we are related to each other and what is our origin. All these kinds of basic questions are being answered. So welcome Santosh Singh, Dinkar Sharma, Agri Binod. Welcome to this chat show. I'm very happy that you have all joined, you have taken your time. Deepak Mendi Rataji watching. Nice to have you here with my group. Now, let me tell you other thing, the other uses, apart from this very basic curiosity satisfying usefulness of the genome information. Once we have the complete knowledge of the genome, then we can protect our biodiversity. We can characterize our germ plasm. India is very rich in biodiversity. It has got several plants and animals which are unique to India, and then the whole world, it honors every country has a right over their own biodiversity under the International Biodiversity Treaty, and they can earn money from that. If somebody utilizes that biodiversity for their economic benefit, then they have to pay for it. They just attached to that. But how will you prove the ownership? Unless you have very high density fingerprint, someone can take your very valuable rice variety or valuable any genetic resource, take few seeds in their pocket, and they can go anywhere in the world and they can make use of that, and you have no way of proving. But once we have a very high density DNA fingerprint, then we can definitely, Dr. Ashok Kumar, Director IRI, AK Singh, welcome. I just saw that you have joined. Welcome to this live chat show. And we have worked together a lot. I will be alluding to that in between. So I was just telling that how the genome information is very, very useful to characterize and to fingerprint our germplasm, which we can protect it and we can claim right over it, and if we really have high density fingerprint, then we can tell that even which gene is coming from our germplasm, which section of the chromosome is coming from our germplasm. Proven in the same manner as we can prove the paternity dispute, or we can prove the criminal cases using the DNA fingerprints. So nowadays it is considered a science which is accepted by the court of law also. So whenever requirement comes, we should have that knowledge, and there should be sequence of our important biodiversity, and there should be fingerprint, so nobody can steal it from us and make misuse of it. Then having the genome information also helps us to find the genes, because the genomes are very big, very, very big, and they have thousands of genes, and you have to find the useful gene from there. So it is like looking for a needle in the haystack. लाइक पूरा भूसे का एक बहुत बड़ा पहाड़ है, उसमें एक सुई खोजना हो, वो जीन खोजना ऐसे जैसे होता है. लेकिन जीनोम इंफॉर्मेशन, if it is with you, then like having a Google map, everybody has now map in their mobile and they can find the places so easily. This is just like that. So genome is just like your map, which helps you find, will be used for breeding. And then the fourth part is that can be actually useful in the breeding methodology itself. Breeding is the selection of desirable type from an extensive variation which is available. From the available variation, we need to select the right kind of material and multiply them to make it a variety. So our knowledge of genome helps to select for the right gene and the right background to make it the best variety, which is a continuous process. And we are all doing that. I'll give you some examples of that. Majid Dar, thank you. Welcome here, Brijesh Singh, who has joined it just now. And Chanchal Singh, one of my students, has joined from Samastipur. I know many of you are listening. You have been eager to listen, even though I have told you so many times the same thing. Now the genome is actually very, very difficult to decode, mainly because genome size are very big. And the genome sequencing techniques were very, very expensive early on when we started the RISE genome. At that time, almost $1 per base pair. Now it has become much cheaper. It is less than a cent, a fraction of a cent per base pair. So now we can do it much cheaper, but it has been quite expensive. And if you see the genome size, they are actually quite variable. I will just show you just one slide which give you some idea. Genome size. Now you see here, is a most of the bacterial genomes, they are very, very small, like 5 million letters, 5 million base pairs. But as you go, the higher plant, they have 125 million base pair is Arabidopsis, then rice is 400 million base pair. Then if you see at the other end here, if you hit the green circle, you see it has got 17,000 million base pair. So the having very, very big genome, it is very difficult to break into pieces, then assemble it into its original form. So this is really the challenge of the genome sequencing and assembly. It's a huge, huge challenge, which of course we have taken up as a group. And I'm very, very lucky actually to have a team here at NIPB. Right back in year 2000, when I called from Pantnagar University by Dr. Prabodha, and they wrote to our Vice Chancellor, Dr. S.B. Singh there. I came here, so we got together, and I had really very bright and intelligent people, among them Dr. T. Mahapatra, which is now the DG of ICR, Dr. T.R. Sharma, who is now the DDG Crop Science, and there was one Dr. D.T. Singh, which went to, in the industry, he went to Singapore, he has opened his own company, and Dr. Kishore Gaikwad, he was our younger colleague, he was a scientist at that time. So these are 4 or 5 people we actually joined together, and we work with the great leaders like Professor Akhilesh Tyagi from Delhi University South Campus was in coordinating, in fact, the whole program. And the 2 teams, one at the South Campus and one at the IRI. We were fully part of IRI at that time. The NRC PB was integrated with IRI. It was not a separate functioning. Now, of course, it is a separate institute. So we established the whole laboratory. Now here I would like to say that, in fact, at that time, our country was lagging behind in the genomics area, because all the genome revolution, it started in 1990s when the Human Genome Project started in USA, National Institute of Health. They made a separate institute for human research. Then there was international was formed, where all the advanced countries of European, Japan, and USA, even China was a member of that consortium at that time. And then parallel, there was a plant genome consortium on Arabidopsis, that was a model plant genome. Even in that one, all the big countries of the world had joined, but India was not a partner. So first time in year 2000, when the human genome and Arabidopsis genome were already published, they just published, so India realized that we should be not left behind. And at that time, Dr. R.S. Paroda was DG ICR, Dr. Manju Sharma was Secretary DBT. These people got together and they had several rounds of discussions where we also participated. And finally this project was launched, which was one of the biggest projects of that time. It was 50 crore. 5 crore for Delhi University, 25 crores from IRI. So from there, we started developing the lab. We had to learn ABCD of the genomics, even how to write the name of the individual clones. It was all very tricky, and that's where the international collaboration has been very, very important. If you want to work in the frontier areas, so you cannot work in isolation, because science is moving very fast. So we have to join hands with the leading countries internationally. And once we are working together in an international setting, then we can do innovations also. Then some of the things we can move ahead and we can contribute to the growth at the frontier of the science. So it is very important to have the international collaboration. And so thank you, Dr. Bhupinder Kumar, for joining. Girja loves lovely watching. Rekha Maurya is watching. MC Sharma is watching. Welcome you all. So when we started the RISE Genome work in year 2000, we had a 5-year target to complete the thing. At the same time, there were companies, Monsanto and Syngenta, they were also doing the genome sequencing of the same variety, actually, same Japanese variety, which they were also doing. And China was working on one of their own hybrid rice, one of the parents, that was indica type, and the rest of the world, they were working on the japonica type. So after some time, they all joined together, even the company, they joined together, and they all shared the data, made it in the public domain. And this sequence was launched in 2002 by the Japanese emperor, because Japan was actually contributing most of that thing. So you can see here that Japan, this is the picture at that time, Professor Akhilesh Tyagi, Dr. Manju Sharma, and we went to talk part of this this event. Now this paper was published. It took another 3 years to bring it to the reference quality, and then in after 2005, now one can see in the last 15 years, this genome sequence of has contributed enormously in the gene discovery process, QTL mapping, then genome characterization, fingerprinting, all kinds of basic studies in rice. And now many varieties have been released making use of this genome. In India itself, more than 20 varieties have been released through marker-assisted breeding, and most of them are for rice, because rice was the forerunner. Once you have the genome information, this whole area of molecular breeding and marker-assisted breeding, it becomes much faster. So this is the value of the having genome information. So I will not go too much detail of the technicality of this thing. There are genome browsers now, where you can, just like you browse in the GPS map, you can zoom into specific streets and house and region. Same way you can browse into the genome, which is not visible with the naked eye. Of course, streets and houses are visible with the naked eye. You need to map. There you have to compress the map. For the genome, you have to make it bigger, because it is invisible to the human eyes. And then once you sequence the whole thing, then you put in just like a map, and you can see on which chromosome, where is the gene, where is the SSR marker, where is the cells. Now we have the concept what is called pangenome, because a single variety does not represent the complete genome of that species in terms of the population. So we sequence a number of varieties and then put them together to make a what is called pangenome, which represents almost all the varieties present in the population. So these concepts are evolving. So after the rice genome work was over in 2005, we had learned all the tricks of the trade, and then we joined this tomato genome project, which was again an international project with 10 countries. I just want to show you the flag, which is you see these are the 10 countries here, and India took the one full chromosome 5 of the tomato, and then we were moving ahead with this particular with great speed until this was started in 2008. In 2005 this thing started, and then in about 2008 the new set of technique came, what is called next generation sequencing, and this was the revolution which brought down the cost of genome sequencing enormously. And this, in short, it is called NGS technology. This basically NGS technology enabled to finish the tomato genome once again ahead of the time, and also to more completion, because initially it was planned to sequence only 20% of the genome, because tomato genome was 2.5 times bigger than the rice genome, and it has lots of repeat sequences as compared to rice. Only 20% of the genome had the gene rich, which is called euchromatin. 80% was heterochromatin. So considering the cost of the sequencing, etc., even 10 countries had joined hands together, it was decided to sequence only the 20% of the gene rich region. But we found as an international community, international group, that the progress was very slow and it was very costly. But when these new techniques came, NGS technique, then instead of 20%, the entire all the chromosomes, 100% was sequenced, close to 100%, 97% genome was sequenced, and then again it was published in 2012. And very similar to rice genome, tomato genome, where India contributed enormously, Again, South Campus and NIPGR was another partner this time. So from two institutions now we had one third more institution. They also contributed in that. And this rice genome and tomato genome, India's contribution was really significant because we had more than 25 authors in both of these publications in the Nature. Both of them were Nature, and about more than 200 authors total. And out of those, 25 authors were from India. In rice genome also in tomato genome, near about that. So that reflects that it was a lot of contribution, original contribution, and non-redundant contribution, because the chromosome which we sequenced, other country did not sequence, so it was a sharing of the responsibility. And at the same time, while we shared it, we grew it also. So the tomato genome actually saw the transition from a traditional kind of sequencing methodology, which was a very slow. Now you see in the retrospect, it was clone by clone sequencing. It was a kind of very slow path, long winding path. This NGS technology was like a super highway, moving very fast and cheap. So the tomato genome was published again. Now let us come to the wheat genome. Now I showed you in one of the slides that in case of wheat genome, the genome size is very, very big, and India took the responsibility of chromosome 2A here. Now, once this NGS technology came, there was no need to share the chromosomes because the technique was so powerful that only one country can do a genome. And also we cannot share chromosome wise. But in case of wheat, it was possible because we have special cytogenetic stocks where we can separate each chromosomes. And then we had the chromosome specific, we shared the chromosome specific DNA and then completed sequencing. And this was published in 2014 in the Science. So both Nature and Science are the top journals of the world. And this chromosome draft genome of the wheat was published in 2014. Then a complete genome was also published in 2018. This is the 2018. After 4 years, the reference genome of wheat was published. Again, India's contribution was very significant because we had 18 co-authors in this paper. And this time, Punjab Agriculture University with Dr. Kuldeep Singh and Dr. from Delhi University South Campus and our institute, we had joined hand to finish chromosome 2A of wheat. Now I would like to tell you about that some of the applications. As I told you that this can be used to find genes. We started to genes for this. You can see very large panicle with high grain number with Dr. A.K. Singh in Indian Agriculture Research Institute. Then there was a quality, exceptional quality of the Pusa Basmati 1121, very long elongation after cooking. Dr. V.P. Singh was here. Now I must tell you that when I joined IRI in 2000, so right very early, when even the 1121 was just about to be released, I met Dr. B.P. Singh, and then he made the cross to develop a population. He can map the genes and QTLs for Basmati quality in 1121. And one of my students, Amravati, who is now assistant professor in Tirupati in Angrao, she was able to map all the major genes per quality, grain length, elongation. In 2008, she published in Molecular Breeding, and this paper has been coded more than 200 times. So right very early, we started developing the population. So developed population for this high grain number and salinity tolerance. Because if you want to identify the genes and map-based cloning, it is not a simple process. One has to develop population, most likely reals if it is a trait, is phenotyping is difficult, and then do fine mapping, then do the map-based cloning. So it's a long process. Keep at it for a long time, and then one can get the desired results and work in a team. So I was very lucky to have the guidance of Dr. V.P. Singh right from the beginning, and then Dr. A.K. Singh, who is now director of IRI. And we work very together. Every year we plant all our material in their field. We interact quite often. We have projects together. And of course, I also have a large network of scientists working all over the country, which is very, very useful to do this kind of meaningful work. Now, one of the genes which we identified for very high grain number in one of these material has been transferred into so many different varieties, and it increases the grain number in all these varieties. For example, in Swarna, in Samba Masuri, in Pusa 1121 also, and we have made near isogenic lines, and the yield increases about 10 to 15%. And we have done the foreground selection and the background selection by making use of the genome information. So that's very, very critical to have this knowledge of genomics, so that I will just tell you that we developed a chip the rice. Once we completed the genome information, then we developed a chip of rice with the 50,000 genes, 50,000 SNP, nearly 19,000 genes were there. And this particular chip has been so useful in mapping and then high density mapping of the trait in rice, and also for fingerprinting of the rice. Wild rice, many people have used this chip around the country, and it is still in the demand. We have patented this chip actually because it is based on the unique concept of single copy gene, and another unique concept is that we have multiple SNP per gene. So that helps us to get the haplotype information of the gene. Now another work which I would like to tell you, that we have used this information, genome information, to characterize the wild rice resources of India. Now wild rice is found in most of our eastern India, Bihar, West Bengal, Orissa, Jharkhand, Assam. There are a lot of wild rice is there. And this is actually immediate progenitor of our cultivated rice. Unfortunately, this wild rice is not protected by anybody, because for the farmers it is a weed. They like to get rid of it. And also as the country is developing into all kinds of developmental activities there, the very area where wild rice grows, it is being encroached for the developmental activities, like for setting up a school or making towns. This wild rice is slowly disappearing. I just wanted to show you some pictures of that, so that you will appreciate. This is my project in the National Professor Project. I have project to collect, from different part of the country, and then identify genes. This is like this. It is a black color. It got very long arms, and the seed they better actually, and you cannot harvest them in one go. They have uneven maturity. As you touch the plant, the seed will shatter. So it's very difficult to collect, and it is present in the roadside. I will just show you some pictures here. See, these are the typical areas. On the roadside here are in the large shallow ponds where the tribal people, they tie it up actually, so that to prevent the shattering. In shallow ponds or even in the near Brahmaputra river. So whole country, like from Kaimur here, Aurangabad, then Azamgarh, then here you can see Dhemaji in Assam. Then that's where it is in the abundant quality, but there are some places like here, you can see Dharmsala in the upland, then in Dhamtari in Chhattisgarh, it is in the upland in the jungle, then even in Ranchi near the small ponds and pits, in Western Ghats in Hubli district. So this it is present all over the country, and then it also grows into the stress situation. Like here, the Unnao district, it is going into very very soil, near the sodic soil. Then in southern, in the coastal Karnataka, it goes in almost saline water, coming the coastal salinity. It can grow in the drought affected area in Mirzapur, and also in flood hit area, Bihar. In the deep water also it can grow. Now these are the area where it is threatened. Just like I told you that you can see this particular area is earmarked for making a house, and the wild rice is beautifully it is growing here. This you can see the red color awns. But when this house will be made, this wild rice will disappear along with it. Then there is a school is getting built up where the wild rice was growing. Then roadside I showed you, there is a lot of rice on the roadside, but when the road is getting widened, all the wild rice is disappeared. Not only wild rice, all the biodiversity which goes both sides of the road, it disappears when we widen the road. So this is really serious. For me, it is a very serious thing. We don't pay attention. In fact, we broaden the road both sides. If we broaden only one side, at least we'll save half the biodiversity which is present in the road. But it is really tragic. Then here you can see industrial area in Raipur. Acres and acres have been cordoned off to develop some industrial town, and this is full of wild rice. I'm sure when the industry comes up, then the wild rice will not be there. So you can see the development is the enemy of wild rice, and farmer is also farmer thinks it is a weed, he wants to get rid of it. So very timely I have collected about 800 from different zones of India, and I have grown them here in IRI fields, multiplied the seeds, then characterized at very detailed morphological level. There is a lot of variability there. Then using this chip which we made, we have also characterized it. And one of the things that we came up, this is a very important point which I want to bring to your attention. Now we are hearing a lot about China nowadays because of this pandemic virus. Sometimes the knowledge could also be dangerous if it is in wrong hands. See, China is very advanced in the genomics. So with their advance in genomics knowledge, they published paper in top journals like Nature and PNAS, and made false claim rather, that all rice originated in South China, somewhere near here, and then from there it went to the entire world. Now they also did science, and they published in the top journal like Nature. But when we did our wild rice analysis, when we rice with the cultivated rice of India, we showed actually that in this picture that Indian wild rice is of three kinds in three different colors. You can see red, blue, and green. And our variety, like our house variety, like EN22 and Indica variety, like Swarna and all those things, they are closely related to our wild rice. That means they have originated from our wild China. So this particular analysis proved that the Chinese theory was wrong, in fact. And then, thankfully, actually, the global community also realized that after we published our paper, then 2-3 papers came actually, also in Nature group of journal. And one of the paper actually reinterpreted the Chinese results with the same data. They showed that they had got it wrong. In fact, rice has originated. It has got the polyphyletic origin. That means it did not originate in one place. It has originated at the mainland India. One is the northeast of India or Southeast Asia, and the third one is the South China, or you can see Indochina. So then again the facts were put to the the right place, that all rice did not originate in China. So one of the examples here you can see, one of the things they had used is that all the white and the cultivated rice is white, whereas the wild rice is in color. And they showed that the same gene, same mutation was present in all the varieties of rice. But we showed that rice, the white rice could be with another mutations also, which is present in the Indian rice, which is the lower side here. So with the detailed analysis, once you have the knowledge of genome, once you know about the things, how the things work, one can do the analysis and get to the fact, bottom of the fact. And through this, we were able to do this thing and prove that all rice did not originate in China. It originated, at least Indian rice originated in India. That's what we proved, and now the whole world accepts it, because now this Chinese theory was put to rest. Then these wild rice I have screened at IRI with the help of my so many students. We have screened it for the drought, for the salinity, for the flooding tolerance, for the anaerobic germination, for different kinds of diseases like BLB, blight, blast, and we find very high level of tolerance against these things. I just want to show some of you here. You can see that some of the lines are very highly tolerant to salt. Some are tolerant to this is in a submergence tank, they are tolerant to flood. Some of them can germinate underwater. Now this is the bacterial leaf blight. You can see there this towards the end, it is very much resistant, almost immune. Then sheath blight. You can see on the top side there is a susceptible variety, and the lower side there is a tolerant variety. Then this year there was a very much infection of very heavy infestation of the leaf spot disease, and most of the varieties in wild rice were sensitive, but there were some wild rice which were highly tolerant. So they have been identified and classes have been made. Now let us come to the my time is actually coming short now, so I will be summarizing the things very I will be summarizing it in a very briefly. Now after this we had this experience with the then we started doing our work on the other crops which are uniquely important for India, and one of them is pigeon pea, because more than 85% is grown and consumed within India. Then another crop we took was the mango. Mango was also, it is very, very important, more than 10, I think it's nearly 10 billion US dollar worth of produce commodity value, and more than about 70% is grown in India. It requires a lot of breeding works because we cannot export because it's very highly perishable. So and there are so many thousands of varieties are there. So huge amount of resources which we can utilize. Now, in case of pigeon pea and mango, both we completed the genome sequence, and we also developed the chip very similar to what we did in case of rice, and we have identified and mapped several genes of that. Uh, then other crop was jute. So we have our institute in Barakpur in Kolkata, and in collaboration with them we sequenced the variety Naveen, which is the leading variety. In case of mango we sequenced Amrapali. In case of pigeon pea we sequenced variety Asha. And now all these three varieties of, which are indigenous important, they have been very useful in developing markers and mapping population and mapping all these things can be done. So towards the end, I just want to show you a picture here that last year we released in 2018 and 19 we released 4 varieties: DRR Dhan 50, Ranjit Sub1, Bahadur Sub1, and there is Suvas, which is Swarna Sub1 with drought and flooding tolerance. So these are the climate resilient variety which has been released in collaboration with the Assam Agriculture University, Indian Institute of Rice Research and National Rice Research Institute, with the help from our institute for foreground background selection using the genomics knowledge. For background selection we use the chip. For foreground selection we use the specific marker for those traits. And there are several more varieties are there in the pipeline. So this shows the practical application where right starting from the very basic work and how this knowledge can be translated into varietal development. So in case of rice, you can see these examples because the rice genome was sequenced quite early in 2005, and during the last 15 years it has propagation. And in the same way we expect that in the other crops also the knowledge of genomics will be helpful in developing new variety with higher productivity, resistance to different kinds of stresses, and also the quality characteristics. So this is of course eventually the goal, to use the basic knowledge for the benefit of the society. So I'm really very grateful to all the institutions, all to the managers of science who provided this support and funding to these research projects. And I'm grateful to all my students and research associate research fellows who have actually contributed enormously. And in fact this whole area of genomics, none of us as the senior faculty or professors, we have not got any training in that. We have learned slowly by doing and experience. But the new generation of scientists which are very much trained in molecular biology and biotechnology and bioinformatics, they are very bright students we have, and they have actually made it happen. Because whether it is the sequencing of the pigeon pea genome or the mango genome or jute on our own, completely on our own, or even in the beginning rice, wheat and tomato, because there also we had to do on our own, even though we learned the things from international consortium, but eventually we had to do it on our own lab. It was not so easy, but with persistent effort, the whole thing became possible. So I would just like to have some interaction. If there's some questions, I see the comment box here now. Somebody, still some 69 people are there. Can somebody make comments? Anybody has any questions? I can see here, read, then I can answer. Try to answer that. If you have any questions, you please write. Ashish, are you there? Hello? You are all there? So I'm not getting any feedback from any one of you. Hello, can you hear me now? So I would like to finish now, because I don't know what is, if there's something has gone wrong. I see still live. It is showing live here. So hopefully हाँ
कमेंट बॉक्स में आंसर
कम
लग रहा है कि आवाज आएगी ना, वो कमेंट बॉक्स में जहाँ पर कमेंट्स आ रहे हैं वहाँ पर आंसर दिखेगा।
कमेंट तो दिख नहीं रहा है इसमें।